I would like to take a little time to talk about scheduling of the SBAC testing and convert some of the data that we've gathered through the technology readiness tool and convert it to real-world schedules. The computer adaptive nature of the next generation of standardized testing does not require the districts to schedule entire schools to take the same test on the same day. This is in contrast to how we handled CMTs, in particular the writing prompt, where everybody in all of the schools were taking the same exact test on the same exact day. This is not required with the computer adaptive nature, since the testing questions are randomized and each student can sit right next to each other and not have the same test question at the same time. While it's not required, it's probable that most districts will continue to schedule their testing class by class just to add structure and order to the process. In the future, there may come a time where we've gotten used to the standardized testing and we're able to schedule it more fluidly throughout the day. But I believe at least in year 2015, everybody will try to schedule it similar to how they've scheduled the CMTs in the past. The preliminary information regarding testing timeframes is that each computer adaptive test will take place in a single session. This is in contrast to how some of you did the pilot test, where the computer adaptive test was maybe broken down into three 30-minute chunks. The preliminary information of the real test that's going to happen in 2015 is that there will be a single testing session for the computer adaptive test, and also a single lab session for the performance task. The performance task will have 1 to 2 hours of lab time activity and 30 minutes of classroom activity. This classroom activity will take place, does not need computers at the time, and can take place prior to the lab time, even up to a day and a half or 2 days before. So there will be 4 distinct test starts: an ELA computer adaptive test, ELA performance task, math computer adaptive test, and math performance task. The testing window, the current testing window in Connecticut is for the months of March and April. The consortium is proposing a 60-day window, but that has not been officially adopted. So we may see that we're scheduled out past the April timeframe in some of the samples that we'll be working for in the future. But I think you should know that this has not been passed into law in Connecticut. Right now, the Connecticut testing window is for the months of March and April, and the consortium is proposing a 60-day window, but that has not been approved as of right now. So let's take a look at some preliminary, again, I can't say that enough times, testing times for each grade and each testing window. And you can see that in grades 3 through 5, the English computer adaptive test will be in about an hour and a half. The performance task in the lab will be up to 2 hours, but there will be 30 hours of in-class activity. Again, that does not have to come in the computerized environment, and that can come a day before or right before if you prefer. 6 through 8, exactly the same time frame. In 11, you get 2 hours of computer adaptive testing added to the 2 hours of lab time. In mathematics, it's the same hour and a half for computer adaptive testing. The performance task in math is considerably shorter. It's about an hour. And the computer adaptive testing goes up to 2 hours in grades 6 through 8 and 11. And the performance task goes up to an hour and a half in grade 11. Again, these are preliminary testing times. These are estimates of the maximum amount of time that students will be required to take the test, though in truth there are no real actual time limits set on the test. So districts should begin compiling mock schedules for each school. These mock schedules should be then shared with principals to evaluate if they are practical in the environment. You need to discuss whether it's practical for the lab resources to be tied up for the specified window. And then if that's not practical, you may need to discuss more creative options, such as utilizing classroom computers to form testing labs, compiling computers or sharing computers from one school to the next, etc. So I already said that, we are not required to have schools, test class by class, grade by grade, to formulate schedules that way. But I really feel as though most schools will probably choose to do that on their own. So, we've already looked at the technology readiness, but let's look at a different way of looking at how many testing days are required. So this is just a little calculator that I've cooked up in Excel. And we can make these links readily available to you all. And you can see here's a way that you can kind of just chart off your different schools, if you have different elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, and just count the homeroom count for each grade, and then count how many labs that you have in your school. And when I say labs, I would include a mobile lab as a lab, a physical lab as a lab, any place that you have a quantity that's the approximate same size as your classroom size. That would be what you consider a lab. And so you can plug your values in here and you can figure out how many testing days. So this might help you figure out that ABC Elementary is considerably worse off than BCD Elementary. So you can kind of try to levelize the playing field. But again, in the technology readiness, we got a little green square that said we were all set. Didn't really tell us a lot. Here we get actual quantities of days per school. It helps a little bit, might tell us where we have a problem in relation to others, but again, it's not enough detail to really bring forward to your principals and let them know that this is what's going to happen during their testing window. So let's look at a couple of real-world scenarios where maybe you might want to start sketching it out and then saying, well, what if I had more labs? What if I had less labs? What if I could make something work out? So here's a scenario. This is a real-world scenario. And what I've done is I've sketched out a scenario where it's a K-8 school and there's 3 classes per grade and they have 2 labs. And you can see that this is a very aggressive schedule where we're testing basically every day. One day in the morning we're filling the lab up, the entire lab up, and we're running all the way from Monday, March 1st through what I propose will be our April break during Good Friday, and all the way out to May 1st. And as we already said, we haven't 100% been granted the right to go the full 60 days. Even at that, this is a pretty tight schedule. We know we're going to have a lot of makeup time to get to work out here. And you can see that this would be a lot of, I put it in a cautionary tale, this would be a lot of stress in the environment. So I said, well, what if I was able to, pull together some labs, some laptops or some classroom computers? What if I was able to manufacture a lab in an extra building? And I ran the same type of thing. So by having 3 labs and 3 classes per grade in this particular school, you can see that it went from a brutal schedule of every day with no real structure to the fact that if I wanted to cycle them by grade, in other words, go grade 3, grade 4, grade 5, because I have 3 labs and I have 3 classrooms, there's 4 tests. Basically, I could test 4 days per week, 1 session per day, and I could finish each grade off 1 week at a time. So that would be one way that we could add structure to it. And again, we need to talk with the principal. Would you prefer to have grade 3 do all of their testing all in a row, 1 week at a time, or would you like to break it up? So another way that you could break it up is to cycle by the test. So say you wanted to give all of your English language arts computer adaptive test first. So if you did that, following kind of the same schedule, you see that grade 3 would have a test, 1 test a week, they'd have a break week, and then they would come back through. Again, a lot more structure by trying to compile together an extra lab. So in a real world scenario, you really, where you've kind of labeled some of these computers as not appropriate for a testing environment, you really might decide that this is the best way to go for this and go through the added effort. So kind of in completion here, I think one of the things that you should do is you should actually sketch out using actual dates and times, fill in your actual classrooms. I've got some schedule examples that I built these things out of in Excel. Maybe you can find one that somewhat fits your school structure. I would encourage you to open it up, find one that fits your schedule, and really kind of go through it and do, I would, if it was me, I would literally go through it and I would say, okay, start with my youngest grade and do a find and change, so class 001 is going to be Mrs. Jones and she's grade 3. I do a find change and do the whole thing, see what it falls out with, come up with a real schedule for each building.